Our strengths are a quarter inch away from our weaknesses. And the tendency is when we like somebody, we are focusing on the strength side. And so you'll hear the tape going in our head. Oh, isn't that person great? On the other hand, if the tape's playing on this side and the tape says, see, there he did it again, we start adding to a negative tape. It's hard to replace those tapes. Bet you've heard, why doesn't he understand me? I was perfectly clear. Anybody who's involved in any kind of a long-term relationship or married or whatever probably has had that kind of conversation between their loved one. And the assumption is that we're communicating and that we're clear, the other person should get it. And the truth is, we hear things through very different filters, and we need help understanding our differences. At the Rawls group, we use a tool called ProScan, which is a strength-based analysis, helping people to understand how we communicate, how we make decisions, getting better understanding of what makes us different and why that is not necessarily antagonistic and be very complementary. Again, I'm going to go back to marriages and long-term relationships. Typically, you pick somebody who's different than you. Why? Because they complement you. Hopefully, he makes you better and you make him better. And to that extent, you're better. And the same thing is often true in business. Our partners are typically somebody who's different than we are. Our siblings are typically different than we are. And to the extent that we can recognize that our differences are what make us potentially really effective, then we got a much better chance of seeing ourselves in a positive light rather than a negative. I believe that our strengths are a quarter inch away from our weaknesses, and the tendency is when we like somebody, we are focusing on the strength side, and so you'll hear the tape going in our head. Oh, isn't that person great? She's wonderful. I just think she's so great, and she did something stupid. Oh, that's okay, because she's really great. She's terrific. On the other hand, if the tape's playing on this side and the tape says, see, there he did it again. Can't count on him. Doing the same thing again. And we start adding to a negative tape. And it's hard to replace those tapes. It's hard to change that. One of the things is using ProScan is to begin, and incidentally, there's others like Disk and Wilson and Myers-Briggs, etc. We think ProScan is particularly effective. Probably heard the statement, it's nothing personal, just business. Oh, that sounds great. And to some people, it makes perfect sense. But I'm a person who's high in extroversion. So people are really important to me. And unfortunately, the negative side of that is nothing is just business. It's all personal. It feels personal. And I have to really work at not making it personal because to a lot of person, particularly somebody who is more task focused, it wasn't about me personally. It was about the idea or the incident or whatever. It was not a personal thing. And so we can get tripped up if I'm seeing that the other person's attacking me personally when in fact they're just trying to deal with an issue. The other thing is, we often run across differences where some of us are internal thinkers and some of us are external thinkers. I happen to be an external thinker. And so a common thing there is I will just say whatever's on my mind and I get clarity when I say it. And so I might have a conversation with one of my partners. He said, well, Hugh, you said such and such. And I say, well, I didn't mean it. What do you mean you didn't mean it? You said it. You must have meant it. Well, the truth is I get clarity as words, an external thinker, when the words come out of my mouth, all of a sudden they begin to take on a much clearer form. That's a strength and a weakness. But for an internal thinker, that person is very careful about how they examine something before they say anything. And they think, make logical sense. Everybody would do it that way. And I wish I would, because in that kind of situation, obviously I can get in trouble, etc. And I'm also a passionate person. I may say something very strongly that sounds like I'm really committed to it. And that may not be the case. So the different internal thinkers and external thinkers can create all kinds of issues. There's another thing that people who are very process driven versus very spontaneous. I tend to be much more spontaneous. Jeff, one of my partners, tends to be much more organized and process driven. So in his mind, he will have his day all lined up, things that he's planning to do, etc. I get a phone call from a client and I have a tendency to run right in and say, Jeff, we got to talk about it. We just got a call from so-and-so and boy, and he's looking at me like, so why is that more important than the 10 things I've got here on my plate to do, etc.? Why do you have, and by the way, isn't this rude. The truth is, I would have been much more likely to get favorable audience from him if I texted him, said, I got a call from so-and-so. When do you have time to talk about ... whatever it might be. If I did that, I have been careful to do what is in his comfort zone. He now makes time for me. He's much more receptive. And finally, just another example is my brother is 3.5 years younger, but he's very high in dominance. He likes to be in control. He is more effective when he is in control. So the last thing he wants is for anybody, particularly his older brother, to tell him what to do. So I'm much more likely to get a positive response from him if instead of telling him what to do, I give him options. Seems simple. Bob, do you want to get together Tuesday? No, probably get a negative response. Bob, you want to get together Tuesday or Thursday? Which is better? Tuesday be fine. Why? That sounds like a simple little ridiculous example, but the truth was in that situation, he got to make the final decision. It was win-win because I got to choose the option. If I remember that, our relationship goes a lot better than if he feels like I'm trying to push him into trying to take control of it over a situation. So understanding where we're different and understanding how we can complement each other becomes critically important if you're going to avoid having all these little things that create frustrations and miscommunication between people who are trying to work together.